Hey there, everybody! Just because current conditions are such that we can't meet inside our amazing Zeiss Planetarium at the Chabot Space and Science Center doesn't mean we can't go outside and look up at the real sky ourselves. This short presentation will help guide you to find several bright stars and constellations. For the month of July, from about 10:30 to 11 p.m., we are into the summer season of constellations, and it's these I'll be pointing out. Why the late hours, you might ask? It's because during the Northern Hemisphere's summer season, the days are longer and the nights are shorter. That, plus daylight savings time, means late starts for us night sky watchers. By the way, if you weren't already aware, yes, the constellations have seasons. For example, you'll never see Perseus the hero during the summer, and likewise you'll never see Hercules the strongman in the winter. We'll meet Hercules in just a bit. As you probably already know, the Earth has 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. Well, the constellations also have seasons, having to do with the Earth's orbital path around the Sun. That and the fact that we can only see stars by looking away from the Sun at night, which changes our view of the stars throughout the year. Unfortunately, unless you're at a good dark sky site, most constellations will be somewhat hard to see fully. But most constellations have at least a few bright stars to help identify them, and the better your viewing location, the more you'll be able to see. A good first step to finding the constellations is done by knowing your compass directions. We can easily do this without a compass using a star grouping that almost everyone is familiar with, the Big Dipper. First, find the Dipper with its curving handle and bowl. The 2 stars at the end of the bowl are called the pointers because if you take the distance between them and extend that distance out about 5 times, you'll come to a semi-bright star known as Polaris, and otherwise known as the North Star. It's the only star in the entire sky that stays pretty much right where it is, so no matter what time of the night it is, or even what month of the year it is, all you need to do is face it, and you'll always be facing due north, with east directly to your right, west directly to your left, and south directly behind you. All the other stars wheel around this pivot point anti-clockwise, making them appear to rise in the east and set in the west. This is of course an illusion caused by the Earth's spin, which gives the appearance that the stars are moving, when in fact it is the Earth that's moving. If you think of the Earth as a spinning top, and you extend Earth's North Pole straight up into the sky, it points almost directly at Polaris. I should also point out that the Big Dipper is not a constellation. It's only part of the constellation Ursa Major, the Great Bear. He's a bit sideways at this time, but the end of the Big Dipper's handle is the tip of his nose, and the bowl is like a saddle on his back. The Big Dipper is what is called an asterism, which is defined as a familiar star grouping. Using Polaris, we found all the compass directions, but Polaris is also the end of the Little Dipper's handle, whose official name is Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, and our next constellation. It's a bit faint, but from Polaris, you might be able to trace its curving handle to its bowl. The 2 brighter stars at the end of its bowl are called the Guardians, because they seem to march around the North Star like protective sentries throughout the night. Over here we have Draco the Dragon, with his squarish head, long neck, 2 short legs and feet, and long tail, which arcs gracefully over the Little Dipper. Rising in the northeast, we have a lesser-known pole-finding constellation, Cassiopeia, the Queen, also known as the Big W, made up of these 5 fairly bright stars here. We can use Cassiopeia to find the North Star by using a fainter 6th star off the tip of the more squashed end of the W. How nice! This is particularly useful because it is almost opposite the Big Dipper's pointer stars, which generally aren't visible for several months of the year, depending on your latitude. So, when the Dipper is down, Cassiopeia is up. Thus, we can find the North Star no matter what the season. Now, we use the pointers in the Big Dipper's bowl to find Polaris and the Little Dipper. Now, let's use the Big Dipper's curving handle to find our next constellation. Simply follow the arc of the Dipper's handle in a continuing arcing line to find the bright star Arcturus, which is the lap of Boötes the herdsman. In other words, follow the arc to Arcturus. He's got a flat triangular cap, a large head, a triangular body that appears to be in a sitting position, his leg and foot, and he's smoking a pipe. A simple shepherd keeping watch over his flock. To find our next constellation, continue that arcing line from the Big Dipper's handle, go through Arcturus in Boötes, and speed on to the bright star Spica, which is the rump of Virgo the Virgin, located in the west-southwestern sky. In other words, follow the arc to Arcturus and speed on to Spica. Most of her stars are pretty fairly faint, and her overall shape is pretty rough as an approximation of a woman lying down, but she has a head, one arm pointing up, a body, two legs, and of course her shiny rump star Spica. Virgo is our first zodiacal constellation this evening. As you might know, all the signs of the zodiac are constellations. What you may not realize, though, is that the zodiacal constellations appear to form a ring around our planet that, when viewed from the ground, appears to form a line in the sky going roughly from east to west. To illustrate this more easily, let's turn our view to the south, which will flip everything we've seen so far topsy-turvy. We call this line the ecliptic, and it is only along this line that the sun, moon, and planets move. This is why the zodiacal constellations were so significant to astrologers. Not that astronomy scientists believe in the pseudoscience of astrology, most don't. But astrologers were some of history's first astronomers, and for their early work, we are in their debt. Since we found one zodiacal constellation, let us locate the others that are up around this time. To the left of Virgo, and just above the southern horizon, we find Libra, the scales. Unfortunately, Libra is very faint, so you probably won't see it unless you're at a good dark sky site on a moonless night. But if you are, you can see its triangular top and its two balancing arms. For those of you too young to know about this ancient technology, scales were used to figure out how much things weighed by putting an item of unknown weight on one side of the scale and then adding known weights to the other side until the two sides became perfectly balanced. The known weights would then be added up to give the weight of the object. Nowadays, it's all done electronically with digital readouts. But anyways, back to our zodiacal constellations. To the left of Libra, we find the constellation of Scorpius, the Scorpion, or, as astrologers call him, Scorpio. He's got two arms and claws, his bright reddish heart is Antares, and a long body with stinger. Because the Scorpion is a sign of the zodiac, and because the planets only move along the ecliptic where the zodiacal constellations are found, sometimes the also reddish in color planet Mars passes near Antares. Mars represents the Greek god of war, Ares, so to avoid confusing the two reddish stars, one is called Ares and the other is called not Ares or Antares. Clever, eh what? To the left of Scorpius is the constellation Sagittarius the Archer, with his triangular head, body, feet, left hand holding out his bow while his right hand is held aloft as though he just loosed an arrow. Just to the left of Sagittarius are two bright, quote-unquote, stars, which aren't stars at all, but rather the planets Saturn on the left and Jupiter on the right. If you get a chance, take a look at them through as big a telescope as you can. They are both rather spectacular. Leaving the ecliptic with its zodiacal constellations, our next constellation is the small but pretty Corona Borealis, the Northern Crown. It can be found just behind the head of Boötes, the herdsman. The semi-bright star in its center is appropriately called Gemma. The open end of the Northern Crown points towards the squarish head of our next constellation, Hercules, the strong man. That square is the asterism called the keystone, and from there you might be able to make out the rest of him. A man running along whilst brandishing a large club. An activity typical of strongmen back in the day, apparently. Found just behind Hercules is Lyra, the lyre, a small Greek harp marked with the sixth brightest star out of the entire sky, Vega. Next up, we see Cygnus the Swan with his bright star Deneb, wings, feet, long neck, and nose. Just below Cygnus, we have the constellation Aquila the Eagle. He's a bit faint, but has a head with a beak and its bright eye Altair, 2 swept-forward wings, a body and tail. The 3 bright stars, Vega, Altair, and Deneb, make up the asterism we call the Summer Triangle. We'll be seeing the Summer Triangle through summer and well into the fall. This month, we've got a rather spectacular surprise in the form of the first naked-eye comet we've seen in years, NEOWISE C/2020 F3, which will become visible within an hour after sunset from around July 14th through the 23rd, and perhaps beyond. You won't want to miss it. Use binoculars for best views. And that's it. There are other smaller or fainter constellations out there, which I encourage you to look for using a good book and maybe a pair of binoculars too. Speaking of good books, I cannot more highly recommend the book The Stars, A New Way to See Them by the author H.A. Rey, who you may know as the same author who wrote the Curious George books. Rey was a scientist who wasn't satisfied with the way modern star charts were drawn. The astroscientists were not interested in the characters, objects, or stories behind the constellations, so for convenience, they just connected the brighter stars into weird geometric shapes, slapped on their Greek names, many of which would mean nothing to the common person, and left it at that. That's all fine and well for them, but for us regular folk, we're more interested in the fun stuff. If you really want to learn the constellations, get Rey's book, which we usually sell here at Chabot's Starry Night gift shop, or from Amazon.com for about $17. I'd also recommend getting a pair of binoculars before getting a telescope. Binoculars are cheaper and easier to use, and there are many wonderful deep sky objects that can actually be best seen with just a pair of binoculars that are noted in Rey's book. If you do want to get a telescope, ask us or research on the web how to make an informed purchase. Be warned. There are a lot of bad telescopes out there with cheap components and shaky, muddy, fuzzy views that will disappoint you every time. A good scope will inspire you and your children to a lifetime of deep space exploration and an appreciation of science and nature in general. If you're interested in getting into the hobby of astronomy, joining a local astronomy club can be most helpful. Chabot is partnered with the EAS, the East Bay Astronomical Society, which has many activities and resources you'll find essential to helping get started in this amazing and beautiful study of our natural universe. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this content, be sure to click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell notification icon to find out when new content has been uploaded. This will really help our channel to grow, which will make us very happy. And we'll see you in the future.